JT Shaver here with New Layer, and in this video I'll show you how to create a dramatic look using top-down lighting with some extra flair. Lighting your subject from above is a classic way to imply drama and create an oppressive or mysterious look. It's also a cool stylistic choice for things like music videos, especially when you combine it with different accent lighting. For this setup, I'm using the Litepanels Gemini 1x1, the Astra 6X, and the Lykos panels, but you can recreate this look using lights at any budget. Yes, nicer and brighter lights will make it faster and easier to create lighting setups, but don't let that stop you if you don't have something as nice. First things first, which is our key light, which I have set up directly overhead. I have the soft version of the Gemini 1x1 panel, which has a pretty wide beam angle, so I am using the 60-degree honeycomb grid to keep the light from spilling all over the place. The placement on this is really pretty simple. I've got it set up on a heavy-duty C-stand and a boom arm way up overhead, and it's especially important to weigh down not only your C-stand, but also to use sandbags to balance the boom arm so nothing falls. If you can, it's safer to use 2 light stands and a crossbar and mount the light on that, but I'm doing this by myself, so I'll take my chances. I set this light to 4000 Kelvin, and I'll explain why in a little bit. I also set my camera white balance to 4000 Kelvin, that way the key light gives us neutral and accurate skin tones that we can color grade more easily later. The key light is very directional and adds a lot of contrast, which is a lot of what makes this look so dark and mysterious. My eyes, as well as under my nose and chin, are pretty much all black. I didn't really plan the hot and sweaty look, but it was over 100 degrees where I was working, and I thought it kind of added to the mood. Although not wiping my face for over 2 hours was probably the hardest part of this setup. With no modifier between the light and my face, the shadows are pretty sharp. Sometimes you might want that, but for this look I did want softer shadows. To soften the light, I'm using my 5 by 6.5 foot IntelliTech fast frame with the included diffusion panel. I hate how long it takes to set up external diffusion, especially when I'm working by myself. I love these frames because it takes less than a minute to pop them open and get them where they need to be. If you're using a COB light, you can get this look using a big softbox, but I highly recommend using a larger external diffusion if you can, because it will give you a higher budget look. If we compare the shots without and with the diffusion, the difference could not be more obvious. The shadow roll-off is a lot softer, and you can start to see a lot more details in my face, even though most of it is still in shadow. Sometimes, especially if you're working in a smaller room, the diffusion panel will kind of glow and throw light around in every direction, and it kind of bounces around and kills the moodiness a bit. That's another thing I like about the IntelliTech Fast Frame Diffusion Kit, is that it comes with a huge grid. A grid will make your light more directional, so it's not bouncing around all over the place, but it will still maintain the soft lighting and shadows. Again, a softbox with a grid will work almost as well if you're on a budget. If you're looking for something more classic or basic, this is as far as you might take things. I wanted to add some extra lights to spice things up and give it a more stylized look. For my second light, I'm going to use the Astra 6X and have it directly behind my head and facing right back at the camera. To make sure this light doesn't show up in frame, I'm pushing it back behind me pretty far. Since the Astra 6X does have focusing lenses in front of the LEDs, it works really well for something like this because it has a tighter beam angle and can throw light farther from a farther distance. I'm also using a V-mount to power this light because I don't want the cords lying around, especially with the extra equipment overhead. Because of the focusing lenses, the Astra 6X is really efficient, and to film this whole setup, I only took the battery down from about 100 to 95%. I set this light to 5600 Kelvin, and since my key light and camera are both set to 4000 Kelvin, it will appear more blue. Not only does this create a cool silhouette rim light, but since blue and orange, which is in your skin tones, are opposite on the color wheel, it adds some color contrast. So here's the shot comparing the key light only and the key light and backlight. You can play with the intensity of the backlight to have it brighter or more subtle, whichever looks best to you. Traditionally, this lighting setup leaves your eyes in complete shadow, but you might want to fill that in a bit if you want to show more details. The easiest way to do that is just to put a bounce board underneath, bouncing the key light back in and fill the shadows, but I want to show you one other little trick. I set the Lykos panel to 5600 Kelvin and placed it just off to the side of the camera. The brightness is only about 2 or 3%, so it's not really adding too much fill light to the scene. My main intention with this light wasn't really to add fill light, but to add a catch light in my eyes. So instead of having just blackness in my eyes, you get this little glint of a reflection, which can add some interest, especially with close-up shots. That's it as far as lighting goes, but there's one more thing I want to do to enhance the mood, and that is to add some haze. I just have a cheap fog machine that I got on Amazon, but with the backlight shooting directly at the camera, it's gonna add a subtle halo effect around my head. The amount of haze to use just comes down to personal preference, so play around a bit and just see what looks best to you. You can also get some really cool effects by combining different amounts of haze and different color RGB lights in the background. By the way, I'm shooting this with my Sony a7S III and Tamron 28-75 f2.8. That way I can get both the wide and close-up shots without having to switch lenses. I've also got the 1/8 power Freewell Glow Mist diffusion filter attached to just kind of blend everything in together subtly. This filter is essentially the same as the Tiffin Pro Mist or the Moment Cinebloom or any other diffusion filters, but I really like the Freewell set because it's magnetic, so switching out filters is really easy. I know a lot of times we're tempted to use prime lenses and shoot wide open at f1.4 or 1.8, but sometimes shooting too wide can actually make your work look worse. In big budget filmmaking, a lot of shots are f4 or 5.6 or even smaller, which is what I'm using here. All that to say, I think f2.8 on a full frame camera is more than enough. So don't get caught up thinking you need some crazy wide aperture lenses to get a professional looking end result. So let's take a look at each light one more time and how they add up to create the final look. Here's the key light with no diffusion, followed by the key light with diffusion. Next, I added the back or rim light to define the silhouette. Next is the eye catch light, which can also add some subtle fill to the shadows. Lastly, I added some haze to enhance the atmosphere. The key light is really what makes this look what it is, so you can just leave it at that, or you can play around with different accent light positions and colors to get a more stylized look. I did test all of these lights with my Sekonic C800, so if you want to see all the brightness and color accuracy measurements, I'll have a link in the description to my light comparison tool. It uses real-world measurements instead of manufacturer-provided specs. That way you can compare lights from any brand more fairly. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to see more like this, and follow me on social media to see some more behind-the-scenes stuff. I'll have links in the description to all the gear that I used if you want to check it out further. Before you go, leave a comment and let me know if you like this setup or what kind of setup you might want to see in the future. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.